In this tutorial, I'm going to be going over the Bloom display settings, which adjust where and when your opt-in form appears on your website. So what I mean by where your opt-in form appears, you can select certain pages and posts or certain post types on your website that specific opt-in form will appear. For example, if you're creating a pop-up and that pop-up is connected to a list that is an RSS to email list for your blog, and you want that pop-up to only be displayed on your blog posts, well then when you're creating that opt-in form and you go to your display settings, you can select, just make this appear on my posts. I don't want it to appear on my pages. I don't want it to appear on my WooCommerce product pages and so on. I just want it on posts. And you can also create another opt-in form, say for your pages, or that's like a more salesy opt-in form that maybe gives someone a discount off their next purchase and that kind of stuff. So you can create different forms and have them appear on different parts of your website, and you can maybe even have those opt-in forms sign people up to different lists, depending on where they are on your website. So like I said, you might have a certain opt-in form that subscribes to a certain list, which is your RSS to email blog list, and then you might have a different list, which is your sales funnel, that the purpose of that list isn't to send people blog posts. The purpose of that list might be to send people a big autoresponder that tries to convert them into a sale, might send them deals and so on. So, and you want to tailor that pop-up. You don't want that pop-up that is going to send people an autoresponder to say sign up to our blog RSS. So you'd actually want to create two different opt-in forms that subscribe to two different lists and appear on two different parts of your website. And that's where the display settings come in, because the display settings allow you to either exclude or include different pages or different parts of your website for that specific opt-in form. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do to get into these display settings is to go to your WordPress dashboard, look for the Bloom tab, and go to your opt-in forms. And here's a list of all of your current opt-in forms as well. You also have the ability to create new opt-in forms. So this is the opt-in management tab within the Bloom settings panel. So you can see here all my opt-in forms that I've created in the past. They're all set to inactive at the moment. And so to start off, I'm actually going to create a new opt-in form, so we can just start from the beginning and move through the opt-in creation process. And the display settings is the third part of that process. So I'm going to create a new opt-in. I'm going to select my opt-in type. In this case, I'm going to create a below the post opt-in. So this specific opt-in type only appears below my posts or pages. And you're going to name the opt-in. So I'm just going to call it below post, and then I'm going to select my form or my account in my list. So let's just say, for sake of argument, that this specific opt-in form, I only want it to appear on my blog. I don't want it to appear, on my contact us page below our contact form. I only want it to appear on our blog posts. And through, Aweber, which is going to be my account type, I've created a specific list. And in my Aweber account, this list is an RSS to email list. So it actually takes my RSS feed and automatically emails someone my most recent blog posts as they're created. This is something you can do within your email marketing software, whether you're using MailChimp or Aweber or whatever. In fact, on our own website, we have our own list in MailChimp that is just for our blog. So if someone signs up with the opt-in form on our blog, they're going to get added to this specific list, which, like I said, is an RSS list. And so I'm going to select my Aweber account. Select my Aweber account, and then I'm going to select my list. So we have 3 lists in our Aweber account. This first list is our blog RSS list, and the second list here is going to be for our autoresponder, our sales pitch. And so this first list is the one I want to put just on our blog. So I'm going to go to next. I'm going to go through the design settings. I'm going to select my template. And I'm not going to go over these settings in detail because we have a different tutorial for that. So if you want to learn more about the design settings, head over to our design settings tutorial. All I'm going to do for this one is I'm just going to use the pre-made layout, and I'm going to adjust the title here, since this is for our blog, and this is going to be for people who are interested in reading our blog and signing up to our blog list in Aweber, I'm going to change the title to "Sign up to our newsletter to get access to our daily blog posts." So this is very clear. When someone's reading the post, they're interested in the post, they see this, opt-in form says sign up to get access to our blog posts, and they get added to the RSS list. So next up is the display settings, and this is what this tutorial is really about. This is where you control where that opt-in form appears on your site. So there's different sections. You can choose the post type. Now WordPress comes with different post types. By default, there's two post types. There's a post and a page. So I'm sure you're familiar with these two different types of posts. Posts are traditionally for your blog, whereas pages might be like an About Us page or a contact page. And we kind of have this idea of two different post types. Now, in addition, your plugins or themes might generate additional post types. So if you're using the Divi theme, we also have a project post type, which is different than a regular post and different than a page. It only appears, in the portfolio module. And if, say, you're using WooCommerce, you might create a product, and a product will be a different post type. That's the product post type. It's not going to appear, in your normal post categories. It's separate. And so this is what we call post types in WordPress. And next we have categories. So if you've selected a certain post type, you can also delve into the specific categories of that post type. So I have I have posts selected, and then I get a list of all of our post categories. So I could actually have this opt-in form appear just in specific categories too. So let's say, for the sake of argument, you have kind of two distinct visitor types coming to your website and two distinct categories. Say you have a website about fashion, and you also have, an area about web design. These are two very different categories, and you might want to tailor your opt-in form for those specific visitors and kind of like have a different headline, maybe even add them to a different list. And you can do that here. So you could actually create two different opt-in forms that appear on two different categories. And you might change the image of that opt-in form to be one to be fashion related, one to be web design related. You might change the header text to be more related to each category. And like I said, you could even subscribe them to different lists and send them different stuff. And finally, we have individual post and page targeting, which is really great. You can even exclude individual posts or include individual posts, and at the same time exclude and include individual pages. So let's say, for example, you have a sales page, and at the bottom of that sales page, let's say you're running a web design company, and you have this sales page, and you want to design websites for people, and you want people to contact you to get a quote. Let's say they're reading your sales page. At the very bottom of the sales page, we create a pop-up opt-in form, and you've just copy and pasted a contact form into the custom HTML account type. Well, this is a very specific opt-in that you've created with Bloom, and you don't want it to appear on your whole website. It doesn't make sense for on your blog to get a quote request form pop up. This is an opt-in form you've created for one specific page, and you could potentially only add it to that page using this display on pages section where you actually target a specific page. So this is really great. You can have total control over where these opt-in forms appear, whether it be on an entire post type, whether it be on an entire category, or whether it be just on a specific post or just on a specific page, or on an entire post type except for the specific post or specific page. So that's kind of a basic overview of all the different display settings. And so, like I said, in this case, I'm creating an opt-in form for my blog. I want it to appear on all my blog posts. And so I'm just going to select posts. I'm going to select all my categories. I don't need to, exclude any posts. And so I'm all done. I'm going to save and exit. As you can see, I have a new opt-in form here called below post. And we've chosen to only display it on posts, not pages. So if we go to our home page here, we're going to notice that there aren't any opt-in forms here because this is a page, it's not a post. It's not our blog. We don't want this opt-in form appearing here, and we've chosen to not have it appear here. So, but if we go over to a blog and we click on any of our blog posts and scroll down, you're going to see the opt-in form appears. So this is an example of these display settings in action. We've targeted a specific part of our website, and we've based that targeting off the post type of posts versus pages. Now, let's say, like I was saying earlier, what if I, for whatever reason, I don't want that opt-in form to appear on a specific post. Maybe let's say it's just a very important post. Maybe you just don't want to clutter it for whatever reason. You just don't want the opt-in form there. I don't know. You might make the decision for whatever reason, or like I said, maybe you've made a separate opt-in form just for that post, and you don't want two opt-in forms to be displayed. So let's say you have this very popular post, right? And the reason it's so popular is because this post you've created is actually a free resource post. You've created, this free ebook. You've created this free resource, whatever it is, and lots of people are coming in through Google, coming into that post. And in fact, it's the most popular part of your website, and it's generating almost all of your traffic. Well, maybe for that specific post, you want to create a very specific opt-in form that is very, very tailored to that specific resource, which is, driving these very specific visitors interested in a very specific thing. And so if you change that opt-in form to say, hey, sign up to our blog and get access to all of our future free resources, that might be much more compelling than, hey, subscribe to our newsletter. They aren't necessarily interested in your blog because they don't know about your blog. They're interested in that free resource, and they'd probably be interested in more free resources. So that's an example of when you might create a specific opt-in for a specific post. And in that case, I would want to actually exclude this other opt-in form, which is kind of this like blanket opt-in form. It's on every single post. I'd want to exclude it from that post so we don't have two opt-in forms. We don't need two opt-in forms on a single post. So let's just create that really quick, and I'll show you an example of that. So here I have this post. It says, don't miss this fashion show. Just a random post I've created, on our blog. And I want to create a specific opt-in form for this specific post. So I'm going to go back. I'm just going to duplicate this one. I'm going to create another below the post opt-in form. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to call it below post 2. Head over to the design settings. And I'm going to change the design of this just to show you. Let's say I want to make it blue. And I want to change this title to something else. So I'm going to say, so sign up to our newsletter to get access to tons of free resources. So I've created this new opt-in form, and I want it to only be displayed on that one post. So I'm going to uncheck posts. I'm going to have it by default not being displayed on anything, and then I'm going to target one specific post, which is this one. Don't miss the fashion show. I only want it to display there. So there's an example. You can even search in here. So if you want to say, like, as you type in, it'll recognize what you're typing, and you can say if you have a lot of posts, if you know the name of the post, you can just type it in there. It's going to show up. So here's an example of me targeting one specific post for this one specific opt-in form. I'm going to save and exit. So now I have two opt-in forms. One's being displayed everywhere, and one's being displayed on one post. And so if I go back to our post here and I click on Don't Miss the Fashion Show, you're going to see that, well, now I have two opt-in forms here. That's not what we want. So what I want to come in and do is actually, for this first opt-in form, I want to exclude it from this post. So I'm going to go back and go here, go back to our display settings, and then go over to the do not display on these posts and do the same thing. Don't miss the fashion show. So now I'm excluding this opt-in form from that post. And if we come back here and refresh, you're going to see that initial opt-in form is gone. And so now we have this blog where one opt-in form is being displayed everywhere. So you go here, that first opt-in form, no matter what post we go to, we always have this general, hey, subscribe to our blog. But for this specific post, and for whatever reason, I wanted to adjust the opt-in form. And so I created a specific opt-in form for that post. I adjusted, the title and the colors. And I think, for whatever reason, this opt-in form is going to convert better. It's a very important post to me. I want to, make sure that everything's converting as well as possible in this post. And so I've created a specific opt-in form for this post, and then I've excluded that general opt-in form from this post. So there's an example of how you can use both these post type level targeting as well as the individual post and page targeting and exclusions. So you have full control over where these opt-in forms appear. So going back, just to touch on how we can use these other display settings. So like I said, you can also choose not to display on certain categories, and you can also choose to display on certain post types. So right now I've chosen to display on posts but not pages. So what if I want to create a new opt-in form for our pages? I'm going to go back. I'm going to create a new opt-in form, and this time I want to create a pop-up. So I'm going to click the pop-up opt-in type. I'm going to name this pop-up. And for this one, I want this pop-up to be our sales pop-up. The purpose of this pop-up is to get our potential customers to sign up, and then I'm going to send them an autoresponder that I've created in Aweber, and it's going to end with some salesy emails, some deals, and that kind of stuff. So this is separate from our blog list that we created. So I've created these two opt-in forms earlier, just for our blog, and they only appear on the blog. And now I'm going to create a new opt-in form that appears on our pages. And all of our pages happens to be tailored to our customers and not other random visitors. So I want to choose Aweber, and I'm going to choose my second list here, which is our sales list. I'm going to design the opt-in form and go next, and this one I'm going to say join our newsletter to get 10% off. So this is, like I said, very tailored to our customers. It's going to get our potential customers to sign up. And then once we have their email address, I have this nice autoresponder set up in Aweber that sends them, resources related to, our product offering. It might send them, testimonials. And then finally, it's going to send them 10% off the purchase. And hopefully, with this autoresponder, we've got ourselves a new customer. So moving on to the display settings. Now this time I create a pop-up, which means we have some new settings within the display tab to go over. And these are called the load-in settings. And this gives you a whole nother layer of control over not where your pop-up displays, but when it's displayed based on certain user interactions. And so I'm not going to get into these right now. I'm just going to first finish creating this based on our location settings. Then I'm going to come back and talk about how these load-in settings can give you so much more control and so much more a new layer of targeting that can actually increase your conversion rates a lot because you can target specific user interactions. Okay. And so, like I said, this opt-in form, I don't want to display it on posts. I just want to display it on pages. And so this is gonna be displayed in our home page, our sales page, and whatever pages we've created. And yeah, I don't need to exclude anything because it's only being displayed on pages. I'm going to save. So now we have 3 opt-in forms, 2 below the post opt-ins for our posts, and 1 pop-up that gets displayed on our pages. And so if I head over to our home page now, we're going to get this pop-up. And there you see, so there's this pop-up I just created. And like I said, this is only on our pages. So if you go over to our blogs, this isn't going to show up. It's not going to show up on our blog. On our blog, all we have is this pop-up we created earlier, which is specifically targeted to posts. Okay, so that shows you how to use these display settings as far as targeting specific areas of your website. And now I'm going to get into the load-in settings and the triggers. And I'm just going to go over these briefly and talk about how they work. And so I'm going to go back to our pop-up and go over to the display settings. Now, these load-in settings are really cool, and you can use them in so many creative ways. And because of that, I've actually created a whole other tutorial that talks about triggers. And I'm going to go over these triggers now, but if you want more information about kind of like how to use these triggers creatively, then be sure to check out our triggers tutorial, which goes into more detail, and it goes into some things that I've used on our own website and that I found to be successful, and so on. So, but these are part of the display settings. So I'm going to go over them now. And like I said, these load-in settings only apply to the pop-up and the fly-in box. These are things, because these are things that load in, they load into the page on top of the page. And so there's kind of this step that happens before they appear, whereas like the below the post opt-in form is always there. These appear, and they appear based on what we call a trigger, and you can customize these triggers. So first up is the intro animation. This affects how, the animation that applies to the pop-up or the fly-in when it appears. So by default, it just fades in, but you can also have it flip in or whatever. We have a bunch of fun animations you can choose. If you want to get something a little more crazy, you can try the flip animation, which is cool, and it might catch your visitor's eye a little bit more. And after you select your intro animation, you can start playing with your triggers. Okay, so the first trigger, and one of the most basic triggers, is to trigger after a time delay, which means when someone lands on your website, that pop-up is going to trigger after the system counts down from a specific amount of seconds. So right now it's set to 20 seconds. So if in this example, if someone landed on your page and they were there reading the page for 20 seconds, once they've been there for 20 seconds, the pop-up is going to load in. So that's how the trigger after time delay works. And so just an example, I'll set this to just 3 seconds and save. And then I'm going to come back to our homepage here and refresh. And if you just wait for a few seconds, that pop-up is going to appear. So yeah, after 3 seconds, it showed up automatically. So yeah, 3 seconds is a little fast. So you can play with that. You don't want to make a pop-up until, the visitor is sufficiently engaged in your website. So 20 seconds is pretty good, but yeah, you can adjust that depending on, whatever works for you. So I'm going to change this back. I'm going to disable this for now and then move on to the next one, which is trigger after inactivity. And how this works is just like similar to the time delay. When you enable this, you can adjust an idle timeout, which is how long the visitor has to be idle before it pops up. So this only applies to inactivity. So if the user becomes inactive and they've kind of like lost interest in your page for whatever reason, maybe they opened up a new tab, maybe they've, someone rang the doorbell and they left and they forgot about it and they came back and they're about to, close their browser. Well, when they come back, they're going to be greeted with an opt-in pop-up, and hopefully, that re-engages them, and maybe you get a sign-up out of it. So that's how that works. Next is the trigger at the bottom of the post. So this is my favorite probably load-in setting because it generally it works well no matter what, because it only applies to people who have reached the bottom of your post, and what that means is if they've reached the bottom of the post, they have been sufficiently engaged in your post and they've read the entire post, and so therefore they're interested in your website and they're more likely than the average visitor to subscribe. So you're already kind of targeting someone who's interested in your website. And secondly, you're only targeting them when they've finished reading, so you're not upsetting their reading experience. So it's a great way to target your best visitors and also not upset them. So some people get annoyed by pop-ups. We all know this, but they are very effective. And I think if you're not using them, you're really putting yourself at a big disadvantage. So this is a great way to use the pop-up, but to kind of feel good about the fact that you're not upsetting your visitors. So I generally would have this always enabled for pop-ups. Next is the trigger after commenting. And this is similar to targeting at the bottom of the post, but it adds like an additional layer of targeting. This will only show up after someone comments on your page. So, which is cool because this person is not only interested in your post, they're completely engaged in it. They've taken part in the post and commented, and so that visitor is very likely to be a candidate for a subscriber. Like they're definitely very interested in your website, and so you might want to have a specific pop-up that you create just for this user interaction. You might have you might create a new pop-up that says, hey, thanks for commenting. We love your commentary, and we hope that you come back and read our future posts and comment again. You might create some specific pop-up for that only gets displayed after someone comments. If they might, feel, personally engaged by that. Whenever you can engage someone personally and kind of play off their interactions, it's gonna be a much higher converting pop-up. So like I said, you can create some pop-up that says, hey, thanks for commenting, please subscribe and come back and comment in the future. And it's a great way to use that trigger. So like I said, if you have this enabled, it's only gonna show up after commenting. So just an example, let me show you how that works. I'm gonna save and exit. I'm going to actually first of all, I have to enable this on posts. So I'm come back. I'm going to enable this on posts. We have the display at bottom of the post enabled, and we have display after commenting enabled. So if I come to this, if I come to any of these posts and I scroll down to the bottom of the post, it's going to be displayed. And also if I comment, it's going to be displayed as well. So that's how those two triggers work. And like I said, you don't have to have them both enabled. In fact, you can create two different pop-ups, each of which get triggered on each of those two different interactions. Next is trigger after scrolling, and this is similar to trigger at the bottom of the post, except this one triggers based on when they hit a certain percentage down the page. So in this case, let's say you're not targeting a blog post. So what's great about blog posts and the trigger at the bottom of the post interaction is that there's usually this kind of like this area of comments at the bottom of the post. They scroll down, they scroll past the post and reach the comments, and that's when the pop-up triggers. But if you have a regular page, the bottom of the page is the end usually, right? So there's nowhere else to scroll, and so they'll kind of hit the bottom, and they'll get the pop-up. But let's say you wanted to have that pop-up trigger not at the very, very bottom, but maybe just like right before the bottom, maybe 80% down the page, 50% down the page. This just gives you that control, and you can make that decision yourself. I mean, you might have this like really, really long sales page, right, that people are going through, and there might be some specific point down the page where you think, this is the optimum time to have this opt-in form appear, and you can therefore have full control over that. So that's how that applies. Next is the trigger after purchasing, and this is another really cool one that's kind of similar to trigger after commenting, but this applies to when someone purchases a product through WooCommerce. And right now we just support WooCommerce, but we might be adding more support in the future, so you can check the documentation down below, and also the documentation in our triggers tutorial to see about what e-commerce systems we support. But at launch, we just created support for WooCommerce. And so what this does is when someone purchases a product and they reach the thank you page, they get this pop-up that appears, and it could be a special offer. It could be, let's say they get a pop-up that says, hey, get 10% off your next purchase, sign up to our newsletter. That's an incredibly targeted pop-up. It's going to be very effective, but it's only going to be very effective to someone who just purchases a product, right? Saying you get 10% off your next purchase doesn't make any sense for someone who's never purchased a product, right? And so it's great. These people who have just purchased something from you they've already become your customer. They're already super engaged. They love your brand. They love your product. They're very likely to subscribe, and they're even more likely to subscribe if you tailor the offer to them, such as giving them a discount. So, like I said, if you're using MailChimp or any of these marketing softwares, if you create a specific list, you can usually create a specific welcome email. So if you create a specific list, which is your product follow-up list or something, and you create this pop-up, and you have this specific pop-up signing up this specific list that only triggers after someone purchases, and the welcome email happens to be, a welcome email with a discount code, then you can say, hey, sign up to our list, get 10% off. You're just targeting that specific user interaction, that specific user, and giving them a specific offer. You're going to see a much higher conversion rate with that. Okay, so those are all the different triggers. I've gone over those in sufficient detail, and if you want even more detail, check out our triggers tutorial. And so the next two settings, which will complete this tutorial, our next two design settings, are the display once per session and the hide on mobile. And these only apply to pop-ups and fly-ins. And what this does is, if you enable display once per session, that pop-up is only going to display once per session duration that you define. So this is something I'd recommend for most pop-ups, right? So you don't want someone visiting your blog and reading each post to keep getting the same pop-up every time they go to a new page, right? It's going to get pretty annoying. So if you've created a pop-up that is displaying in a lot of posts, you probably want to have this enabled. And what this will do is that pop-up, once it's closed, it won't come back again until their session duration is over, which you define here. So let's say you only want that pop-up to be displayed once per week. You can enable this and say session duration 7 days. And finally, we have hide on mobile. If this is enabled, then the pop-up will not be displayed on mobile. If you're creating a fly-in, same thing, the fly-in will not be displayed on mobile. And the reason we have this is because let's say you have a pop-up and a fly-in on the same page. That might look okay on desktop because there's sufficient space for both of those opt-in forms to live. But on mobile, everything gets reduced in size, and what's going to happen is that pop-up and the fly-in is just going to sit on top of each other, and it's kind of unnecessary duplication. You're going to close the pop-up, and then you're going to see the fly-in. You have to close that too. It's there's no point in having both. So if you have a pop-up and a fly-in, you're going to want to disable one of those on mobile. Yep, and that concludes our display settings tutorial. And so I've gone over how to use the display settings to target specific opt-ins to specific post types as well as specific categories, and how to exclude certain posts and certain pages as well as target certain posts and certain pages. And then I've talked about how to use triggers, just not to add a different layer of targeting, which is the user interaction targeting. And so I encourage you to play with these settings and really create different offers that apply to different parts of your website. And I think if you do that, you're going to see a really big increase in conversion rates.